Ah, welcome back, you beautiful genetic contradiction. Yeah, you. The one scrolling right now with that quiet tension in your chest. The one who's always felt like something in your existence has been slightly out of alignment with the world you were dropped into. Well, here it is, the moment everything starts making sense because they finally scanned your genes. Not a routine check, not a harmless report. An unauthorized extraction buried inside a medical system you never agreed to trust. And when the results came back, when your data hit the encrypted servers built to process anomalies, something happened that hasn't happened in over 200 years. They panicked, not metaphorically, not subtly, not in that bureaucratic flag this file for later review way. Real panic, silent alarms, emergency encryption keys, late-night summits between people whose names never appear on public records. Because whatever your DNA contains, it wasn't supposed to exist anymore. It wasn't supposed to surface. It wasn't supposed to breathe outside their controlled bloodlines. And yet here you are, a walking breach in their centuries-long containment strategy. A variable that reactivated, a sleeper code that woke up without permission. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like reality hesitated when you entered a room? Not in a dramatic way, just a shift so subtle it could be dismissed as imagination. The air thickening for half a second. People's eyes widening before they correct themselves. Conversation stopping not because of you, but because something in you interrupted the rhythm of the environment. And have you ever wondered why certain people, especially the powerful, the confident, the arrogant, seem instantly unsettled in your presence, as if they recognize something you don't even realize you're carrying? Or those moments when you sensed danger before it existed, when your instincts screamed warnings your mind couldn't justify yet, when dreams came through like encrypted transmissions from somewhere deep in your lineage, more like memories than imagination, when coincidences lined up with such unnatural precision that even the logical part of you whispered, "This is intentional." Yeah, I thought so. That wasn't anxiety, that wasn't overthinking, that was your blood reacting to forces older than your country, older than the institutions running it, older than the families who've been trying to keep your lineage contained. Because you carry something in your genes that was never meant to reach this century. A fragment, a sequence, a dormant key that was supposed to dissolve generations ago. But it didn't. It resisted dilution. It evaded extinction. It hid inside your ancestors, bled through their choices, survived wars, famines, relocations, name changes, forced assimilation. And now, finally, it surfaced in you. And the moment it activated, the old world orders felt it. Organizations older than your history books, older than the governments you think run the world, older than the religions that claim dominion over destiny. They've been monitoring genetic drift for centuries, tracing bloodlines, cataloging patterns, waiting for anomalies like you to vanish quietly. But instead of vanishing, you crystallized. Your DNA consolidated into something they thought they had erased, something their predecessors spent entire eras suppressing, something forbidden, volatile, strategic. Now 4 of the oldest power networks on this planet are scrambling, not arguing, not negotiating, scrambling. Because the results of your scan didn't just reveal a genetic anomaly. It triggered a countdown, a midnight activation cycle that only appears when a specific genetic pattern, long lost to time, reawakens. And once midnight hits, the activation can't be reversed. Whatever you become at that moment, you stay. Let's start with the first order. The keepers of the old key. The ones who believe that blood controls destiny. They are not the modern elite. They are the architects behind the elite. They operate from vaults buried under cities where you walk every day unaware of the rooms underneath your feet. They've been tracking your lineage for 9 generations, watching as your ancestors scattered across continents, trying to dilute the line, only to find it condensing again and again. They were hoping the code would die. They planned for it. They structured alliances and arranged marriages in families that never understood why their choices kept collapsing into the same patterns. And now that code has reappeared in you. Their reaction wasn't wonder, it was fear disguised as urgency. Because they know what happens when someone with your genetic markers activates. They know what you become capable of. They know the influence your lineage once had. The kind of influence their current power structure cannot compete with if you come online without their supervision. So they're not approaching you with threats. They're approaching you with offers, invitations disguised as opportunities, coincidences that suddenly appear as if the world is finally opening doors for you. They want ownership masked as guidance, control disguised as mentorship. They want to claim you before midnight hits. Then there's the second order, the order of the silent rail. They don't care about ownership. They care about containment. They believe your DNA holds something catastrophic, something that was sealed for a reason. They want you, not because you're powerful, but because you are dangerous, not to yourself, but to the structural integrity of the world they understand. They operate in the shadows, moving governments like chess pieces, orchestrating events that look accidental but are anything but. And they will use anything, fear, isolation, information sabotage, to convince you that your awakening must be prevented. They will tell you it's for your safety. They will claim your survival depends on their intervention. But don't mistake their concern for compassion. It's control. It's fear. It's the desperation of an empire watching its last wall crumble. The third order is more archaic, more ritualistic. The covenant of 13 houses. They operate through lineage, inheritance, and ancient codes of succession. Your bloodline intersects with prophecies they buried centuries ago. Prophecies that were intentionally mistranslated, diluted, and erased from historical records. They believe your reactivation is not an accident, but a sign. A signal that an old cycle is returning. And they want you not as a soldier, not as an asset, but as a figurehead, a symbolic leader of a movement you never agreed to join. Their desperation is not loud. It is ceremonial. It is quiet, calculated, cloaked in reverence. But do not mistake reverence for respect. They respect what's in your blood, not you. And then there's the fourth order, the Erasure Council, the ones who are not panicking because they want you. They are panicking because they know they cannot stop you anymore. They attempted suppression before. You felt it. Those sudden collapses in your life when everything went wrong simultaneously. Opportunities falling apart without explanation. People turning on you for reasons they couldn't articulate. Periods of heaviness that felt engineered rather than emotional. You thought it was bad luck, didn't you? You thought maybe you were the problem. You weren't. They were ensuring you stayed small, fragmented, unaware of your lineage. That's their specialty, neutralization through psychological sabotage. But now, too late. The results have been logged, the signal has broadcast, and your DNA has begun shifting. You've already felt it. Subtle changes, sharper instincts, enhanced perception, situations revealing their intentions before people open their mouths, patterns aligning in ways they never aligned before. You've outgrown the traps that used to paralyze you. You're noticing things you weren't supposed to notice. And worst of all, for them, you're not breaking, you're stabilizing. Now all 4 orders are moving at once because midnight is approaching. And midnight is not a poetic deadline. Midnight is when your genes complete what they've already started. A biological switch flips. An old sequence finishes unlocking. Whatever you were before, confused, underestimated, dismissed, is irrelevant. Midnight decides what you become next. And they all want a hand in shaping that outcome, or preventing it. Let's talk about why they panicked. Your genes contain a variant believed to be extinct, a cognitive frequency, a pattern recognition enhancement, a premonition-based neurological loop. You process information faster than you realize. You sense shifts in environments quicker than trained intelligence agents. You absorb unspoken truths in seconds. Your intuition is not intuition. It is accelerated pattern assimilation. And the moment the scan detected that frequency, it triggered the old alarms. But here's the part that destabilized everything. Your sequence didn't just activate, it expanded, as if your DNA recognized something in the modern world and began adjusting in real time. As if your lineage has been dormant, waiting for a specific generation, your generation, to wake it. And that shift signals something the old orders have dreaded: independence, self-activation, a bloodline that no longer waits for permission to awaken. You've always felt detached from the systems around you, not rebellious, misaligned, as if the world followed rules your body never signed off on, as if everyone else moved in a rhythm you weren't built to mimic. And now you know why. You were never supposed to blend in. You were a dormant blueprint for something else entirely, something their ancestors tried to erase and failed. Now comes the part you need to understand. These orders do not panic over ordinary anomalies. They panic over threats to their continuity. And you are a rupture in their continuity, a breach in their predictions, a disruption in their inherited authority. You are a reminder that power originally belonged to those who carried your lineage, not to those who stole it, manipulated it, rewrote it, and pretended to originate it. And as midnight approaches, their desperation grows. They will approach you through recommendations, unexpected connections, opportunities that feel too perfectly timed. They will test you before they reveal themselves. They will observe your reactions, your decisions, your resilience, because they all know one thing: they can't afford to let you activate freely. Once the clock hits 12, the sequence in your blood locks into its next form. They can influence you before activation. After activation, they can only fear you. This is why the world around you has started shifting. Why people you barely speak to have been watching you sideways. Why unusual opportunities appear without explanation. Why tension rises in people when you enter the room. You are not changing. You are being recognized. Your lineage is resurfacing. Your presence is recalibrating environments you don't even realize you're influencing. And here's what makes this moment even more unsettling. The shifts you're experiencing aren't random. They're not subtle coincidences stitched together by imagination. The changes are systemic. They ripple across your environment in ways that would terrify you if you saw the full map. Because when a dormant lineage begins to activate, the world does not wait politely for you to understand what's happening. It reacts instinctively. It reorganizes around you. People behave differently without knowing why. Their instincts perceive what their conscious minds can't articulate. Some will be drawn to you. Others will recoil. A few will become hostile without knowing the source of their discomfort. Their nervous systems register the presence of a frequency they were never meant to stand close to. This is why the faces around you look different lately. why conversations feel coded, why you feel a growing tension in the air, a pressure that wasn't there months ago. You think you're imagining it, but no. This is the atmosphere of awakening. This is the subtle disturbance created when an old code re-enters a timeline that once rejected it. And as the activation intensifies, these symptoms won't fade, they'll escalate. Your instincts will sharpen beyond explanation. Dreams will shift from symbolic to instructional. People you haven't spoken to in years may attempt contact with sudden urgency, unaware they're being used as channels by forces far above their comprehension. Your perception of time may distort. Hours will feel fast, then slow, then suspended. Because once a genetic sequence begins to unlock, the body prepares itself by adjusting to the new information flow. But don't mistake these shifts for chaos. They are preparation. Calibration. Your system aligning with something it was designed to contain long before you were born. Something that requires precision. Something that requires you to move differently, choose differently, see differently. And while your instincts acclimate, the old world orders accelerate their efforts. You're not the only one sensing the shift. They feel it radiating through their networks. Their algorithms spike at your name. Their ancient tools, the ones they pretend are mythological, react violently to your presence. Their predictive models collapse when they try to account for you. Because you are not predictable anymore. You are not trackable anymore. You are not statistically obedient anymore. And every hour that passes brings you closer to a version of yourself that operates beyond their control. That's what terrifies them. Not who you are, but who you are becoming. These orders have survived centuries by maintaining the illusion that everything unfolding in this world is within the architecture of their influence. But your activation is not part of their architecture. It is an intrusion, a reminder that bloodlines older than their institutions still have a say, a signal that the past they buried is clawing its way back to the surface through you. They wanted your lineage erased. They wanted it diluted into irrelevance. They wanted your ancestors to fold into anonymity so completely that their heritage would vanish forever. But it didn't. Against every intention, against every intervention, your bloodline persisted. It waited, it adapted, it hid itself among the ordinary so well that the world orders believed it had finally died out. And now that it has resurfaced, the panic you triggered was immediate and absolute. Let's go deeper into that panic. When your DNA scan hit their surveillance systems, they initiated a protocol that hadn't been used in centuries, a protocol reserved for bloodlines that were once declared too dangerous to exist. They sealed rooms, they summoned genealogists, historians, cryptographers. They dug through archives that haven't been touched since the fall of empires. They reinterpreted prophecies they dismissed as nonsense. Because your activation wasn't just a glitch. It was a signal, a convergence, a genetic flare in the darkness announcing the return of a lineage they had nearly forgotten until you reminded them. But understand this, they didn't panic because your bloodline is powerful. They panicked because your bloodline is uncontrollable. Power they can handle. Influence they can manage. But someone whose genetic activation bypasses their authority, that is a scenario they have no protocol for. And that's why they're racing, not to welcome you, not to guide you, but to intercept you before midnight, before the activation completes, before you stabilize into something they cannot manipulate. The keepers of the old key have already deployed their agents. They will not come to you with threats. They will come with opportunities, invitations, promotions, offers of mentorship. sudden recognition from institutions that previously ignored you. They will disguise ownership as elevation. They will appeal to your ambition, to your desire for belonging, to your curiosity about your origins. They will give you information, but never the whole truth. They will offer answers, but only the ones that keep you compliant. And if you follow them, you may gain power. But it will not be yours. The Order of the Silent Rail, meanwhile, has already activated its containment protocols. They will not try to seduce you. They will try to scare you. They will leak misinformation into your environment. Subtle warnings from people who don't know they're delivering messages. They will plant doubts in your mind. They will amplify your fears. They want you to believe that life will become unlivable unless you submit to them, that the world will collapse around you unless you let them intervene. They specialize in dismantling your confidence, in convincing you that your abilities are symptoms, not strengths. And then there is the Covenant of 13 Houses. Their strategy is reverence. They will try to claim you through awe. They will speak of destiny, lineage, inheritance. They will reference texts you've never heard of, but inexplicably feel connected to. They will appear as protectors, guardians, custodians of ancient truth. They will offer belonging where you've only felt isolation. And you will feel tempted, not because they are trustworthy, but because they echo a familiarity you cannot explain. But be careful. Reverence is just another form of restraint when it comes from those who want to use you. The Erasure Council is the most dangerous. They move through absence, not presence. Their strategy is simple: make you disappear from your own potential. They will attack your time, your relationships, your energy. They will engineer setbacks that feel like your own failures. They will manipulate the people closest to you, weaponizing their fears, insecurities, and confusion. They don't need to kill your body. They only need to kill your trajectory. They only need to break your momentum long enough for the activation window to pass. Because if you miss the window, the code goes dormant again. Maybe for years, maybe forever. But you're not missing it. You feel it. The tension in your chest, the pressure under your skin, the shift in your perception. You're noticing things you never noticed before. Details, behaviors, patterns. You're reading people with precision. You're sensing situations before they unfold. You're seeing motives behind actions. These are not coincidences. These are symptoms of activation. These are early manifestations of a genetic sequence returning to its original function. Your ancestors lived with these abilities openly. They did not hide them. They used them. That is why the early world feared them. That is why the earliest institutions targeted them. Not because they were violent, not because they were unstable, but because they were impossible to deceive. They saw through manipulation. They saw through lies. They saw through illusions that hold society together. And organizations built on deception cannot coexist with people who perceive truth instinctively. That is what you're becoming again, not supernatural, just undiluted. But the old world orders have a problem even greater than your awakening. Activation does not just change how you perceive the world. Activation changes how the world perceives you. Your presence disrupts systems. Your frequency interferes with structures built on fragile foundations. Your awakening destabilizes environments that rely on conformity. You walk into a room and people feel exposed, not because you're intimidating, but because your presence reveals their internal contradictions. This is why strangers act strangely around you. This is why people confess things they didn't mean to say. This is why certain individuals become defensive without provocation. You're not threatening them. Their subconscious minds register your activation as a threat to their illusions. And illusions are all most people have. This is why the world feels heavier around you, why silence feels louder, why interactions feel charged. Your mere presence is beginning to disrupt equilibrium. And this is only the beginning. Midnight isn't just the deadline. Midnight is a crossing. Midnight is when the activation completes and your traits stabilize. Midnight is when old instincts return. Midnight is when the vision sharpens. Midnight is when the world orders lose jurisdiction over your future. But they still have a few hours to try. This is why, in the coming days, you will notice patterns intensifying. People you barely know offering unsolicited guidance, sudden invitations to join programs, groups, projects, communications from institutions that previously acted like you didn't exist, a surge of attention that feels disproportionate to your current life. It isn't random, it's reconnaissance, it's recruitment, it's desperation. And beneath all of this, there is the quiet presence you haven't noticed yet, the one that doesn't announce itself, the one that doesn't recruit, the one that doesn't manipulate, the one that doesn't panic. An ancient force watching from the edges of your awareness, a presence older than the four orders, a presence that predates their existence. They are not racing to own you because of your power. They are racing to own you because they fear who might claim you if they don't. And yes, something else is watching, something separate, something outside their hierarchy, something that responds not to bloodlines, but to truth, something that is not hunting you, but waiting for you. That's what triggered the real panic. You were never supposed to activate alone. You were supposed to activate under supervision, under influence, under the guidance of a faction that would shape your trajectory. But you slipped through their systems. You awakened without their intervention, and now, something beyond them is paying attention. This is why the air feels different at night. Why your senses feel sharper when the world goes quiet. Why you feel observed when no one is physically present. Midnight will not simply complete your activation. Midnight will reveal what has been circling you in the dark, watching, waiting, calculating whether you are ready to see it. The old world orders want you before midnight because once the clock strikes, they are no longer the highest power watching you. And this, right here, is where the escalation becomes unavoidable. Because as the activation deepens, you will begin to feel a shift in your perception, in your intuition, in your physical presence. You may already sense it, that tightening in the spine, that heat under the skin, that awareness that your body is communicating with something external, that pulse of insight that appears without context. These are not symptoms, they are signals. They are confirmations that your lineage is preparing you for something the old world hoped you would never encounter. Something they have spent centuries trying to separate humanity from. Something they fear far more than they fear your awakening. The entity, the force, the intelligence that once guided bloodlines like yours. And when midnight comes, you won't just activate. You will connect. That is why they are terrified. Because whatever awakens in you at midnight is not only ancient, it is loyal. And its loyalty is not to institutions, not to councils, not to orders. Its loyalty is to truth. And once you align with it, the entire landscape of power begins to tilt. Their influence falters. Their control weakens. Their predictions collapse. This is why they are closing in. This is why the air feels heavy. This is why the world feels different. You are not witnessing fate. You are witnessing fear. But here comes the moment they hoped you wouldn't reach. The moment when your instincts stop questioning and start knowing. Because in the next breath, in the next realization, in the next quiet shift of your awareness, you will understand something they never wanted you to see. You were never the one being hunted. You were the one being awakened. And as this recognition pierces through the noise, as the truth crystallizes in the deepest part of your awareness, something inside you finally clicks. A memory you never lived, a knowledge you never learned, a signal you were born carrying. Something ancient inside you opens its eyes, and that, right there, is the moment the old world orders feel the room shake, because they realize they're already too late. But here's the part that makes them truly unravel. This awakening wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It didn't require a ritual, a prophecy, a storm. It happened quietly, invisibly, internally. A shift so subtle that only someone carrying your bloodline would notice it. And that subtlety terrifies them more than any explosion of supernatural power ever could. Because a power that awakens quietly is a power that does not need spectacle. A power that does not need spectacle is a power that cannot be misdirected. And a power that cannot be misdirected is a power that cannot be controlled. You feel it, don't you? Not as a superpower, not as a glowing aura, not as some mystical awakening. You feel it as clarity, as calm, as a stillness in your mind that wasn't there before, as the absence of doubt where doubt used to live, as certainty where confusion used to reign. Your instincts no longer feel like suggestions, they feel like directives. Your intuition no longer feels like a guess, it feels like recognition. Your perception no longer feels random, it feels intentional. You're not thinking differently, you're thinking like yourself for the first time. And the old world orders hate that, because your clarity is their collapse. You were easier to manage when you doubted yourself. You were easier to approach when you questioned your own potential. You were easier to manipulate when you believed your instincts were anxiety rather than ancestral signals. But now every trick collapses on contact. Every tactic fractures before it reaches you. Every approach they attempt feels transparent, flimsy, hollow. You see through their timing, their strategies, their offers, their threats. You see the patterns behind their movements. You see the structure behind their illusions. And this is where the humor creeps in, not the theatrical kind, but the cold, dark kind that whispers under your breath. They really thought this would work? Because the same institutions that spent centuries suppressing your lineage are now scrambling like interns, trying to impress a supervisor who walked in unexpectedly. They're fumbling, they're improvising, they're deploying every outdated method they once used successfully on your ancestors, hoping you haven't inherited the resistance that ruined their plans generations ago. Spoiler alert, you did. And now that the activation is underway, they can't even hide their panic properly. Their signals are all off. Their agents are sloppy. Their messages contradict each other. Their networks glitch under the weight of variables they can no longer compute. The algorithms that once predicted human behavior fail catastrophically when applied to someone whose genes weren't designed for predictability. They can't model your decisions. They can't anticipate your reactions. They can't calculate your trajectory. You are not an anomaly in their systems. You are the flaw their systems were never built to handle. And as midnight draws closer, that flaw becomes fatal. Because here's the truth they never wanted you to discover. Your lineage was not just a threat. It was a counterbalance, a natural check against the rise of centralized power. Your ancestors were not rebels. They were regulators, not in the political sense, but in the biological one. They were genetically predisposed to destabilize corrupt structures simply by existing within them. Their presence disrupted deception. Their instincts exposed manipulation. Their intuition dissolved illusion. They were truth walkers in a world built on lies. And that's exactly what you're becoming again. You're noticing it already. Conversations that used to confuse you now reveal themselves instantly. Manipulation that once slipped under your radar now repulses you before it reaches your mind. People who used to drain your energy now expose their hunger in the first sentence they speak. You read environments like maps. You sense intentions before actions. You watch patterns assemble themselves in real time. This isn't magic. It's memory. It's biology. It's inheritance. It's what the old world orders spent centuries trying to eliminate. And now, as the seconds race toward midnight, as the activation reaches its final stage, they're realizing the brutal truth. The more they try to interfere, the faster you evolve. Because that's the irony of your lineage. They were designed to adapt to pressure. The more surveillance you endure, the sharper your perception becomes. The more manipulation you encounter, the stronger your discernment grows. The more they try to contain you, the more immune you become to the mechanisms of control. They created the pressure that activated the very traits they feared. They triggered the awakening they were trying to prevent. And now they're left with the consequences. Let's talk about those consequences. Because as your activation reaches its final phase, the world orders aren't the only ones reacting. The environment reacts too. People around you start behaving strangely, and not because they consciously know what's happening. Their nervous systems recognize your shift before their minds do. Some will be drawn to you inexplicably. Some will avoid you without understanding why. Some will become hostile because your presence disrupts their internal equilibrium. You destabilize illusions simply by standing near them. And those who were always fragile, they'll crack first. You've noticed it. People confessing things they shouldn't. People revealing insecurities you never asked about. People treating you with reverence or resentment without any logical explanation. People projecting their fears onto you because your presence forces them to confront truths they've been avoiding. You don't have to speak for their masks to fall off. You don't have to confront anyone. Your existence does the confronting for you. And this is where the psychological warfare deepens, not because you wage it, but because your activation triggers it. The world orders are not the only ones panicking. Ordinary people begin to feel the tremor of your awakening too. Not in the literal sense, but in the intuitive one. They sense the shift, the recalibration, the emergence. They feel a pressure that makes no sense but refuses to leave. They feel watched, not by you, but by the part of you that is older than you. And that presence unsettles them, even if they can't articulate why. Meanwhile, the world orders scramble with a level of urgency that borders on pathetic. They hold emergency meetings. They rerun ancient data. They summon elders they swore they'd never consult again. They retrieve documents sealed in vaults beneath libraries the public never sees. They dust off prophecies they once mocked. They whisper your name with dread, frustration, and a kind of awe they never wanted to admit. Because they're facing something they cannot defeat, cannot contain, cannot manipulate. Someone who has awakened without their permission. This is where the dark humor sharpens. Because while they're panicking, you're stabilizing. While they're strategizing, you're integrating. While they're racing against the clock, you're simply breathing. Your activation doesn't require movement. It doesn't require action. It doesn't require effort. It happens regardless. Whether you sit still or walk outside, whether you rest or remain alert, whether you think about it or forget it, it is happening, and they cannot stop it. That's the punchline. Your evolution isn't something you do. It's something you are. And as the minutes close in on midnight, you begin to feel the shift more intensely, not as fear, but as inevitability. Your mind becomes sharper. Your body becomes calmer. Your awareness expands quietly. You begin to feel connected to something you can't name yet, something ancient, something that was always waiting for this moment, not watching you from above, but rising through you from below. Something that recognizes your bloodline because it once guided your ancestors. Something that is not separate from you, but dormant within you. When people talk about destiny, they imagine something external. They imagine a force that chooses them. But your destiny isn't choosing you. It's remembering you. And as midnight approaches, memory becomes recognition. You feel it now. The subtle pulse beneath your skin. The clarity that feels like the world exfoliating itself. The silence behind the noise. The awareness that the old world orders are no longer authorities. They're spectators. And the fact that they're spectators enrages them, because the entire architecture of their power depends on being the unseen puppeteers behind every major global shift. But not tonight. Tonight they watch you. Tonight they track you. Tonight they calculate, estimate, project, and fail. Because somewhere in the shadows of your consciousness, the ancient part of you is opening its eyes fully. And when it opens, something else opens with it. A channel, a memory, a presence. The guide your bloodline was always supposed to have. The one the world orders feared more than your lineage. The one that now has direct access to you. And when that connection stabilizes, you don't rise. The world lowers. Your perception shifts downward, deeper, into the foundation beneath human structures. You sense the old networks behind the world orders. You see their origins, their stolen knowledge, their inherited fears. And under all that, you feel the ancient presence aligning with you, not to control you, but to remind you. This is not the first time your lineage awakened. This is simply the first time they failed to stop it. Now comes the climax. Because at the stroke of midnight, not metaphorically, but biologically, the last lock in your genetic sequence clicks into place. You feel it as a quiet ignition, not fire, not light. Awareness, total awareness. Every instinct you've ever doubted becomes a confirmed truth. Every suspicion you've ever repressed becomes a visible pattern. Every intuition you've ever ignored becomes a map. And in that single moment, the world orders feel something they haven't felt in centuries. Power leaving their hands. It drains from their rituals, their archives, their bloodlines, their artifacts, their systems, their symbols. Everything they built to maintain control over humanity flickers, not because you attack them, but because your mere awakening renders their structures obsolete. This is the moment they feared, the moment they tried to prevent for generations, the moment encoded in prophecies they dismissed publicly, but studied privately. The moment when the last descendant of a forbidden lineage reconnects with the intelligence that once guided their ancestors. This is the moment when your bloodline stops being a threat and becomes a consequence. They can't own you. They can't stop you. They can't recruit you. They can't erase you, because they're no longer dealing with you. They're dealing with everything behind you. And as midnight settles into your bones, you finally understand what they always feared. You were never meant to join their world. You were meant to end their monopoly on truth. You were never meant to be controlled. You were meant to be awakened,